So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about a bit of a weird concept. So, today we're going to be talking about floor of a deck. Usually people talk about the ceiling because the ceiling is a lot more hype and people like to look up, I suppose. But sometimes you need to look down. So, if we think about the ceiling of a deck, it's probably going to be the most degenerate thing a deck can do. So, honestly speaking, Snake Eye, they can just genuinely FTK. I don't remember if it was one or two cards, but it was something like normal summon Snake Eye Ash, and then you somehow get a machine on field. You make this guy. Let's see. You make Blaze Phoenix, the burning bombardment bird, and then you do this with Proxy F, and you can resummon this with the Atlantis, and you can also reborn this with Promethean Princess. And then on top of that, you can then make, I believe it's something like Agave Dragon or something, because Flamberge is a dragon to burn for game, I think. It goes something like that. But why does no one do this? Well, obviously because it requires so much different like extra deck slots and also some main deck slots as well, I think. Wait, does it require any main deck? No, I think it's only extra for this one in particular. But yeah. In general, I'd say not that great. Even though an FTK is technically the best thing you could be doing, and it's like fairly efficient in terms of like starters required to execute, and you do have other different plays you can make with Snake Eye as well. Like you can still do the normal regular IP stuff instead of just doing that if maybe you get interrupted or you just don't have the materials to do this. So, well, yeah, it's honestly not that good of a combo, I'd say. If I were to give it a rating, probably like a 4 out of 10. And it, of course, does not get any style points because it's just not a very interesting burn combo, in my opinion. But, yeah. That would be the ceiling. But what is the floor of Snake Eye? What is the most minimalistic play you can do against like a Maxi? Well, normal summon Snake Eye Ash, Snake Eye Ash effect, grab Poplar, then special summon Poplar. Poplar will then add you the field spell, and you will activate the field spell to put something into the back row. Whatever this something is, it doesn't really matter that much. It could be Flamberge, whatever. And then you link off Poplar and Snake Eye Ash or IP. And then next turn, whenever your opponent special summons a guy or normal summons a guy or whatever, you can use IP plus Flamberge to make SP. And that is the floor here. And this might be what you do against like a Maxi. So the thing about this is you honestly just make SP, and SP is either 1 or 0. Well, 1. Yeah, 1 or 0 interruptions. Like your opponent can give up their battle phase, run over IP, and then you make SP. Or if you make SP, they can summon a guy, run over the SP. So getting both bashes in this case, a little bit rough. If your opponent has just a normal summon or special summon that's bigger than SP, they can just run over it, and then full combo question mark. And yeah, that's about how that goes, I suppose. You do have the ability to technically search some follow-up if you send specifically Flamberge, I guess, because Flamberge can reborn like Ash and Poplar, but even if you commit, well, even if you get both of those searches, you're just in a much worse position. So, whoa. How many special summons do we have to commit to get to this? It's 2, which is not like the worst thing in the world, but if you think about it this way, if you were under Maxi and you special summon 2 times, your opponent literally could get a normal summon to force out the IP, and then they can have a special summon to do their full combo. So, yeah, honestly, not that great. How about something like Kashtira? So, if we have the starter for Cash, instead. And I think this is probably why Cash is so, like, the Kashtira main deck cards are so strong. It's because they have an insanely high floor, I suppose we can put it that way. So with Kashtira Unicorn, if you were to maxi this, I can just, well, maxi after Unicorn, right? And I may or may not even need to commit to a summon, right? So I special summon Unicorn if you didn't maxi before the main phase. Then this Unicorn here is going to be able to banish or just attempt to banish or force out some kind of interruption. So no matter what happens, this Unicorn is going to be live again for the next turn. So then we could go activate Unicorn effect next turn to banish a key extra deck card. So right now, one of the relevant ones would be something like Azamina, uh, Azamina Recielago, I guess, right? Wherever that is. So we can banish this. We could banish the Fiendsmith Link 1, making like five cards in your. Yeah, it's like 5. No, wait. Yeah, 6. It's 6 cards in your main deck are kind of useless now. And then about 5 cards in your extra deck are useless as well. And you also would have created a hand trap onto this Unicorn, and it just gets a lot of mileage for a very low investment. So the ceiling on Kashtira, though, on the other hand, is not very good. So the most you can end on, if you start with Unicorn, is you can end on Shangri-Ira, Fenrir, and Arise Heart, but the Arise Heart will not be able to activate its effect immediately, allowing your opponent to do like Zeus plays. The worst thing that could happen is if they were to inherent summon a Zeus, you would just get completely cooked. So yeah, that's really, really not great. And then the other play that also plays around Nibiru is simply Arise Heart Pass with 3 materials, which doesn't really do much. If you think about it in terms of interruptions, Arise Heart is literally just 1 interrupt. It's just banish 1 card face down. Yeah, not that great, but I guess it has the macro effect, which could be relevant sometimes, depending on exactly what your opponent's playing, I suppose. But if it's not relevant, this is literally just 1 banish, which is just awful. Yeah. This is technically, if we discount the macro, just ignore macrocosmos existing for a second, this is unironically worse than SP Pass with the normal summon Snake Eye Ash, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, the floor is a lot better in Cash, but the ceiling not so much. And some decks just have better floors than they do ceilings, and some have better ceilings than they do floors. So, for example, if we were playing, I don't know, let's say Blackwing, if you normal summon like Sutri or activate Simoon effect to start your combo, you end on something completely insane, right? But if we interrupt Simoon with a hand trap, yeah, Simoon is genuinely a nothing burger. It's basically a really crappy vanilla monster. So let's assume maybe activate Simoon effect, we Ghost Ogre on Blackfeather, or not Blackfeather, Black Whirlwind. Then, yeah, Simoon just sits on the field doing nothing, and you don't necessarily have a play after that. So yeah, that's kind of miserable. But in case we're playing Kashtira, we have the option of using our different Kashtira monsters' effects. And then if we go do something like a Vanquished Soul, this isn't like necessarily the best thing in the world, because you still struggle somewhat to get into the Rosin to begin with. But assuming we start with Rosin, maybe it goes something like normal summon Rosin, Ash Blossom Drift Spring. So in this case, we have follow-up called linking off for Rock of the Vanquisher to special summon Rosin. And then Rosin can search next turn and potentially search the turn after as well, allowing you to still attempt to search 2 more times with the same Rosin. And this is all off of just more or less normal summon Rosin, right? But with Blackwing, you would need to top deck a whole dead-ass new starter. So just something to keep in mind, I suppose, is that some cards have, well, just much more versatility than others, and that helps contribute to how good the floor is for these cards. So, for example, Kashtira Ogre might seem like a pretty crappy card, right? If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each of the following effects of Kashtira Ogre once per turn. During your main phase, you can add 1 Kashtira Trap from your deck to your hand. When this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the jam step, you can excavate up to 5 cards from the top of your opponent's deck, banish 1 excavated card face down, and place the rest on the top of the deck in the same order. So with Kashtira Ogre, if we were to just special summon Kashtira Ogre past, it's just not that bad, not that great. It's kind of like mid, I'd say. It's not like going to lose you the game, but it's not necessarily going to win you the game. But if you pair it with floodgates like Dimensional Fissure or Deck Lockdown, usually in this case, if I have Fissure, my opponent will start struggling a bit to access the extra deck to get to their SP, and SP is probably the only back row removal a lot of decks play now. So assuming you actually need to make a link 2 and then link off something else to make SP to do the banish effect, if we have Kashtira Ogre, we can keep running over your guys by battle, so you just won't be able to get enough materials for SP. And then there's also the fact that then that kind of rules out the extra deck, so you can't really access the extra deck to out maybe the Fissure or macro I have here. So then your only option left is to top deck back row removal, which is now going to be impossible because of Kashtira Ogre's effect activating at the very least every time it's my turn and I go battle phase with the Ogre. I can go Ogre, banish 5 off the top, and this prevents you from ever being able to top deck back row removal for whatever back row floodgates I'm playing. So in that case, when we look at it from this context, Ogre becomes a lot more powerful. So yeah, it's important to not just look at, well, when everything goes right, what you can end on. It's important to also consider if everything goes wrong, everything just like falls apart, if your deck still has plays. And I think that's a little bit more important than the ceiling right now, because honestly, even if your ceiling isn't that insanely high in terms of like how crazy the end board is or whatever, like you don't need to necessarily be FTKing or setting up like 20 negates, omnis, destruction effects or whatever. Because honestly, going first gives you just such a big advantage that even if your board isn't that insane, it's probably enough to just win the game since you're going first. So like the going first end board, as long as it's like something that's moderate, it should be fine. It doesn't need to be anything like super cracked or super insane. Like sure, let's assume like this is not the case, but let's assume Snake Eye as Zamina Fiendsmith ends on 50 negates and interruptions or whatever. But if they go second, they will just lose the game on the spot because their deck is crummy and they have no extenders and only starters. And the deck I'm saying right now is actually, in fact, if I recall correctly, this is just simply Isolde turbo decks where you hit the one choke point of Isolde and they have actually no play. And then, yeah, it's just suffering, right? So when you summon Charles and summon other Charles and other Charles, and then maybe an Apollosa on top of that, like that's pretty cracked. And then you have all the back row, like the equip spells that do things. And you have like Angelic Ring, which actually deals with Droplet and Dark Ruler no more. Like that end board's pretty cracked, right? And sure, like let's say you get pretty spicy with it and you throw in like maybe a Nat Beast onto the end board, or maybe you throw in Naturia Exterio. It doesn't really matter that much because that's something you can only do going first in uninterrupted. Otherwise, your deck doesn't really end on much. You just have some non-engine that you're hoping carries your legacy, like Ash Blossom Joy Spring. Maybe you have Infinite Impermanence, Called By, and that's what you have for if you're interrupted, right? But Kashtira, you have your Kashtira monster banish face down effects, which are a lot better in this case. So in hand trap heavy meta, I think Kashtira, just in general, the cards, like you don't necessarily have to play all the extra deck cards. Like just slotting in uh, Unicorn and Raitsoth can be pretty strong. And I mean, they're just big guys in general. Like if I special summon Unicorn, I can just run over one of your guys if they're not big enough. So in this case, maybe it's something like Azamena, Ilias, Sylvia. This has just 1.5k defense, 1.9k attack, special summon Unicorn. I can just run over this, and that's not too problematic, except for this Vector, which can get you a little bit of follow up, but only adds a trap, so it's not even that bad, honestly. So yeah, it's pretty important, I'd say, to start considering like the floor. So if we look at the floor on Fissure, it's pretty insane, right? Like how do you interrupt Fissure? So we set like, or macro, right? So we set macro, flip over macro, and then a lot of decks just can't play from that point. And this is simultaneously the ceiling and the floor for macro, really, because there's no real options with macro except to set it and flip it face up. But because of that, the ways you have to interact with macro as well, very limited. So you can't hand trap macro. You just pretty much have to hit it with, well, straight up. It might as well be just main deck backer removal. If you have to access your extra deck to remove the macro, it's probably just not gonna happen a lot of the times. So if we were to just pair it with like a Kashtira Unicorn, and let's assume you like negate Unicorn, I set macro, flip over macro, then you can't make SP because you'd have to somehow inherent summon into SP, which is just not happening, right? And then I can just bash SP, and then you're just stuck dealing with macro plus Kashtira Unicorn until the end of time, basically. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.